Imagine beaming the exact address of your house out into space. You have no idea who reads it, a friend or maybe an invader. Stephen Hawking warned that contact with an alien civilization could look a lot like the native peoples of America meeting Columbus, which ended in tragedy for the weaker side. And yet, despite those warnings, for decades we've been firing signals, maps and messages into space, maybe holding the door open to our own extinction. In this one, we're setting the Hollywood fairy tales aside and sticking to the facts and the controversies around the hunt for alien civilizations. Humanity has always asked itself the same question: are we alone in the universe? That basic curiosity drove the whole rise of science and technology. The moment we built radio telescopes and rockets, we started listening to the sky and sending probes out into it. The very idea that intelligent beings might be out there somewhere fascinates scientists and the public alike. And back in the 1960s, a whole new field of science was even born: SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Its goal is to detect signals from alien civilizations, or any other trace of their existence. The first SETI listening experiment, Project Ozma, was run by astronomer Frank Drake in 1960, pointing a radio telescope at nearby stars, hoping to catch some artificial signal. Nothing turned up back then, but the idea stuck, and we started combing the cosmos systematically. The search for life out there isn't just human curiosity, it carries a philosophical and social weight too. Discovering we're not alone would rewrite our whole sense of where we stand in the universe. Some believe contact with an alien civilization could hand us access to enormous knowledge, new technology, maybe even unite humanity against a brand new reality. Ronald Reagan once said that if an alien invader ever threatened Earth, our divisions would vanish overnight. Suddenly, we'd all feel like one single species. So what does hunting for aliens actually look like today? Mostly, it's listening for radio signals from space and watching for signs of technology on other planets. Networks of radio telescopes scan billions of frequencies, looking for anything that stands out against the natural noise of the stars. Private money launched the biggest SETI projects in history. In 2015, Russian billionaire Yuri Melner, alongside Stephen Hawking, announced Breakthrough Listen, a 10-year, $100 million project running a search 50 times more sensitive than anything before it. Thousands of hours were booked on giant radio telescopes in the US and Australia, listening to 1 million of the nearest stars and hundreds of galaxies for any sign of life. And here's the key part. This project chose to focus purely on listening, not broadcasting. The scientists figured we gain more by quietly eavesdropping on the cosmos than by loudly announcing that we're here. NASA and other space agencies are in on the search too, though so far they've stepped carefully around the topic of intelligent aliens. NASA funded SETI programs in the past, but in the late 1990s the money got cut, after critics called the whole thing a hunt for little green men on the taxpayer's dime. Today, most of the research is carried by the private sector and universities. Interesting detail: China built the world's largest single-dish radio telescope, fast, 500 meters across, and it hands part of its time over to the alien signal search too. In 2022, Chinese astronomers set off a sensation announcing they'd picked up suspicious signals that might come from alien civilizations. Turns out it was interference from Earth's own electronics. So what do rich sponsors get out of all this? Some are surely in it as idealists. They want their name in the history books as the discoverers, and the vision of first contact grips them. On the other hand, you've got politicians and space agencies that understand perfectly what a massive media win it would be to announce a discovery like that. Even microscopic organisms, something as small as bacteria. And in practice, the vast majority of this search zeroes in on exactly those simpler forms of life. On Mars, for example, where rock samples get carefully analyzed for traces of ancient microorganisms. Or on Europa, that ice-covered moon of Jupiter, which may be hiding an ocean beneath it that just might be capable of sustaining simple life. Even a modest revelation like that would be a scientific and public relations breakthrough. A perfect argument for bigger budgets and proof that exploring space actually pays off. The irony is that while we dream of contact with an advanced civilization, the real research usually comes down to hunting for the tiniest scraps of life. Back in 1974, the famous Arecibo radio telescope beamed out the first deliberate message aimed at potential aliens. It was a binary-coded image, a diagram of the human figure, our solar system, the DNA helix, and a greeting. The message was fired toward M13, a distant cluster of stars 25,000 light-years away. Frank Drake, the man behind it, admitted it was more a demo of what the telescope could do than a real attempt at contact. But it proved something important. We're ready to publicly give away our location and information about ourselves. In the 1970s, we sent the Pioneer 10 and 11 probes into space, along with Voyager 1 and 2. Every one of them carried a message for whoever might find it. The Pioneers have metal plaques engraved with figures of a man and a woman, and a map of Earth's place in the galaxy. The Voyagers, meanwhile, got the famous golden records, vinyl discs holding the sounds of Earth from the music of Bach, to greetings in 55 languages, to the noise of rain and whales, plus images of our planet and humanity. This was Carl Sagan's project, and he imagined that if some alien being ever caught a probe drifting between the stars, it would play back this album of Earth and come to know us. The odds of that are vanishingly small, but the showing off of our presence didn't stop there. In later years, we started sending radio messages straight at chosen stars. Russian astronomer Alexander Zaitsev organized a whole series of these transmissions. The powerful transmitter of a 70-meter dish at Yevpatoria fired messages toward a dozen odd nearby stars, 30 to 70 light-years away. Those messages held texts, pictures, and greetings from people who'd sent them in over the internet. It was part science, part marketing, because a private company sponsored it. One that, for a fee, let people add their own message to the package. In the years after, other groups copied the idea, and for a while, there was even a service collecting messages from users and beaming them at the stars, for money of course. NASA got in on this stance too. In 2008, the agency beamed the Beatles across the universe toward the North Star, marking its own 50th anniversary and paying tribute to John Lennon. All told, over the last 50 years, Earth has fired off a few dozen transmissions deliberately aimed at potential listeners in space. Fans of active communication say it's high time we broke the silence of the universe. The outraged critics fire back that it's madness, a handful of astronomers screaming into space on behalf of all humanity, gambling with consequences no one can calculate. That fight has gotten especially heated in recent years, and we'll come back to it. Picture a night sky packed with stars. Our galaxy holds around 200 billion of them, and the observable universe holds hundreds of billions of galaxies. Statistically, it seems almost certain that life develops somewhere beyond Earth too. For years now, we've known of thousands of exoplanets orbiting other stars, dozens of them potentially Earth-like. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. Humans showed up on Earth relatively recently, around 200,000 years ago, and all our modern tech and long-distance communication is barely over 100 years old, ever since we invented radio. So other civilizations could have arisen far earlier and reached a level of technology millions of years ahead of ours. And if that's true, where is everybody? Why don't we see the traces of galactic empires or overhear alien conversations? This question is known as the Fermi paradox. It's an apparent contradiction, because with so unimaginably many worlds and so many chances for life, the universe should be teeming with civilizations, and yet it stays silent. We have no credible evidence of anyone out there beyond Earth, a phenomenon many astronomers have started calling quite simply the Great Silence. It's possible that life, intelligent life especially, is far rarer than we assumed, and that Earth is the exception here. Maybe its emergence demands an exceptionally rare set of geological and chemical conditions, and a stable environment that most planets just don't have. Another hypothesis is called the Great Filter. It supposes there's some stage in a civilization's development, biological or technological, that's nearly impossible to get past. Life, for instance, might form fairly easily, but almost never evolve into intelligent forms. Or intelligence rarely leads to technology, or, worse still, every advanced civilization sooner or later destroys itself. In that scenario, the universe could be full of dead civilizations, snuffed out before they ever manage to reach us. It's a pretty bleak picture because it forces the question, does the same fate wait for us? But there are other, more intriguing answers to the Fermi paradox, ones that don't rule out that the aliens are right next door, watching us, hiding themselves extremely well, waiting until we reach the right level of development. This hypothesis assumes more advanced civilizations deliberately avoid meddling with more primitive societies. They let them develop naturally, a bit like the way we create nature reserves and try not to disturb the animals, in theory at least. Aliens might also be trying to reach us, just in a way we don't even notice. Maybe they're using technology we can't begin to imagine, while we're still out here listening for radio waves like old-time telegraph operators. Or maybe their signals are rare and short, and we're simply looking in the wrong direction at the wrong time. Scientists point out that so far we've focused mostly on continuous signals, picturing something like a radio beacon that broadcasts non-stop. But if aliens sent out only short bursts, once a century let's say, then they're incredibly easy to miss. And finally, there's an explanation that should interest us a lot more. Maybe the aliens stay silent because for them it's a matter of survival. Maybe everyone but us avoids sending signals because it could draw the attention of the wrong kind of beings. This idea is so dark, it earned its own name, the dark forest. Picture a dark forest at night with hunters hidden in it. Each one is armed, listening for the faintest rustle. If he detects another, he shoots first. No warning, because he's afraid that otherwise he's the one who dies. Exactly like a predator striking to wipe out the competition. This picture of the universe was drawn by Chinese author Liu Cixin in his novel The Dark Forest, part of his three-body science fiction trilogy. The way he tells it, every rational being understands that another civilization, even a seemingly friendly one, potentially threatens its existence, if only through the urge to grab new territory. It's a literary fantasy, but it caught on in scientific circles. Evolutionarily, this trust pays off. On Earth, caution often decides whether a species survives. Plenty of scientists think our presence can't be hidden anymore anyway. Take those strong radar pulses, the kind coming from military systems. They could be picked up by aliens from tens or even hundreds of light years away. Modern technology is loud, and Earth gave itself away long ago. Astronomer Seth Shostak of the City Institute points out that we've never, not for a single moment, considered switching off our radar because it might be dangerous. We've got thousands of communication satellites, transmitters, and electronic devices humanity won't abandon just because some hypothetical aliens might notice them. Critics of the dark forest idea point out that the distances in space are enormous. Even if predatory civilizations exist, the potential targets are so far away, it's hard to picture a reason to attack. There's no shortage of resources out there, so any advanced civilization has billions of planets at its disposal and doesn't need to raid its neighbors for raw materials. And even if it does fear the competition, the flight time between stars, hundreds, even thousands of years, makes interstellar wars pretty impractical. Before one aggressor reaches the other, that other one could have leapt ahead, technologically for instance. This isn't the Middle Ages, where neighboring kingdoms fought over borders. There are ethical and evolutionary arguments too. Carl Sagan and other city pioneers believe that a very old, advanced civilization must have conquered its aggressive instincts, because otherwise it would have blown itself up long before, just as we fear that our own aggression might be our undoing. Sagan even figured that members of such an old civilization would treat us with respect, and our backward humanity would have no choice but to return the favor. Optimistic? Very much so. Of course, not everyone agreed with him. As I mentioned at the start, Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest astrophysicists of our time, spoke out publicly on the search for aliens again and again, and every time he sounded the alarm. He said he believed intelligent life exists beyond Earth, but he didn't believe in its good intentions. He warned grimly that you only have to look at ourselves to see that intelligent life can turn into something we wouldn't want to meet. He pointed out that civilizations receiving our signal might treat us the way we treat bacteria, as something worthless. They could be so technologically powerful they'd see no reason to reckon with us at all. Picture ants in a clearing sending up a smoke signal that humans happen to spot. Would humans treat those ants as their equal partners? Probably not. Best case, they study the anthill with some curiosity. Worst case, they just stamp it out. Hawking suggested we could be exactly those ants in the universe. Strong words, ones that drew both support and criticism in the scientific community. But he wasn't alone in this. Back in 2015, during a debate on sending signals, a lot of astronomers came out against active broadcasting. Elon Musk voiced caution about such plans at the time too. An open letter demanded that before anyone fires off a powerful signal on behalf of Earth, there should be a worldwide scientific, political, and ethical debate. The argument was that this is too serious a matter for a handful of enthusiasts to decide for the rest of humanity. As you can see, scientists are split. Defenders of actively hunting for aliens often say, let's not be paranoid, maybe the aliens turn out to be wonderful. The critics answer, let's look at history. Have meetings between unequal civilizations ever been wonderful? The conquest of America, which I brought up at the start, comes up again and again as a warning. For Europeans, it was the dawn of a new world. In 1492, Columbus reached the Caribbean and opened the way for the expeditions that followed. The Europeans had firearms, steel, and horses, an edge the locals had no defense against. The first encounters were sometimes peaceful, but then came the next expeditions. Small European detachments could subjugate entire empires, thanks to alliances with local enemies, to cunning, but also to the diseases they dragged in with them. Smallpox and measles spread faster than the armies, killing millions of people who had no immunity to them. It's estimated that within a few decades of contact with the Europeans, most of the native inhabitants of America were dead, mainly because of those diseases. The civilizations of the Maya, the Inca, the Aztecs, with all their culture and architecture, were subjugated or destroyed in no time. The Europeans imposed their rule, their religion, and used the locals as cheap labor. History is full of examples like this. In Africa, Europeans set up colonies and seized the land. In Australia, the British waged brutal conflicts with the Aboriginal people for decades, taking their territory too. In India, they established colonies, and in China, they forced through concessions and favorable treaties. Every single time, a technological and military edge let them subjugate the weaker societies, often under the banner of bringing civilization, while in practice seizing their resources and turning the people into their slaves. No wonder Hawking and others compare a possible encounter with aliens to exactly these events. Of course, we also have historical examples of more peaceful meetings. Trade between different cultures, say, but those usually involved civilizations at a similar level of development and power. In 2022, there was a lot of buzz about a proposal called a beacon in the galaxy. A group of scientists, some of them from NASA, put forward a new, highly detailed message. It was meant to hold a lot of specifics about Earth and about us. They wanted to send it toward a region of the galaxy packed with stars like our Sun. There were even proposed dates and plans to use the biggest telescopes, like China's Fast Dish, but for now, it's just a project on paper, one that never got approval to go ahead. As of today, we're trying to listen rather than broadcast, but there's no guarantee it'll stay that way, because no rules exist to regulate this in any form. Let's forget for a moment about the space wars and invasions straight out of the movies. The most likely first contact scenario looks nothing like Hollywood. If we ever do detect alien intelligence, it'll most likely happen at a distance, through a signal. Maybe our telescopes will register a strange radio pulse of clearly artificial origin, something like the famous WOW signal from 1977. If a signal like that were confirmed today and traced to, say, a system with a known Earth-like planet, that would be first contact right there. It wouldn't mean chatting with aliens over the radio, more like years or decades of uncertainty and decoding. And what about a physical meeting? If it ever happens, it's far more likely we'll see an automated probe. Which makes sense, because before we send people to Mars, we sent rovers first. So an alien civilization might first send a small research probe, a drone to monitor us from orbit, or even quietly land somewhere. People report UFO sightings all the time, but so far not one has turned out to be a confirmed alien drone. A direct visit by living beings is a far more advanced stage. Various scenarios also look at how such contact would affect humanity. Imagine that tomorrow it's announced we've received a signal from aliens, we're certain they exist. What would happen? First, probably euphoria and disbelief, and then a flood of debates. Religious movements might see the aliens as angels or demons, depending on the interpretation, and a lot of people would be gripped by uncertainty and fear of the unknown. In short, first contact could be an informational and cultural chaos. That's exactly why there are so-called post-contact protocols, rules set up in case we actually do receive a signal from aliens. In theory, they're simple. First, you have to confirm the signal carefully to avoid a false alarm. Then, notify the world. No cover-ups, no hiding it from the public. Next comes global consultation. The decision on how to respond is meant to be a shared one. No rushing off a reply without the rest of the world's consent. But all of this is scary, because it's worth adding that these protocols are only recommendations. They're not legally binding in any way, and everyone knows that when push comes to shove, reality could go entirely its own way. Plenty of analyses point out that the biggest threat could be us ourselves. Our reaction, chaos, panic, and overinterpretation could do damage, economic crashes, or internal conflicts, say, even without any aliens involved. The history of the cargo cults in the Pacific is a good analogy. Picture it. The Second World War ends and the American supply planes suddenly stop landing on the remote islands. For the native inhabitants, the sheer fact that so much food, clothing, and tools from another world had been showing up was almost a miracle. When that miracle ended, they started doing something extraordinary. They built control towers and runways out of bamboo, imitating the airfields they'd seen. They also put headphones made of cans on their heads and played air traffic control. And all of it to summon the supply planes back. These were rituals meant to pull the wealth back, because they didn't understand where it had really come from. It shows how people try to make sense of what they don't understand. For us, contact with aliens could be that kind of shock too. We'd try to interpret it through our own preconceptions, which could lead to bizarre and potentially dangerous collective behavior. When billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos talk about conquering Mars or building cities in space, they often bring up extraterrestrial life too. Who knows what we'll find out there? It builds a certain narrative of the future, one where humanity heads into space as the next chapter of its development. Sociologists suggest that in the fear of aliens, it's easy to find a reflection of our own earthly anxieties. During the Cold War, plenty of alien invasion films were really mirroring the fear of a foreign ideology, communism or capitalism. Today, the aliens might symbolize, for instance, our fear of artificial intelligence. Even Stephen Hawking warned that the dominance of aliens or of artificial intelligence is an existential threat to humanity. So maybe the whole debate about hunting for aliens is really a conversation about ourselves. About how to use technology wisely and responsibly, how to avoid self-destruction, and how to treat those who are weaker. And if we go back for a moment to the cosmic abstraction, it's worth flipping the roles. We ourselves could one day become the aliens if we fly off to colonize another system. How will we treat the primitive life we find there? Let's hope we learn something from our own warnings. The rise of artificial intelligence is a fascinating subject. At first glance, it has nothing to do with aliens, but when I was gathering material for this film, I kept running into exactly this comparison. Picture us creating a super intelligent being. It would be like meeting an alien mind right here on Earth. Something that thinks differently and acts differently than we do. In both cases, we're dealing with an intelligence that could be far more powerful than ours, and we don't know how it'll behave toward us. That's exactly why first contact scenarios with aliens sometimes get analyzed right alongside the ones about creating a strong artificial intelligence. And the question comes up, how do you keep that kind of intelligence from ever doing us harm? Asimov, the science fiction writer, came up with his famous 3 laws of robotics, a set of rules meant to stop robots from harming humanity. Carl Sagan, on the other hand, proposed that we build our own ethical values right into the message we send out to aliens, to show them that we come in peace. But the real question is, can you really teach someone or something far more powerful than us to play by our rules?